Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this Bakerpedia Roundtable on AI, automation in the baking industry. I'm Mark Flurka, your host for today, and this seminar is brought to you by Bakerpedia. Today we are joined by five baking industry experts, including Yuegang Zhao, Chief Commercial Officer at KPM Analytics, leads global quality assurance and food safety solutions with 20 plus years of experience across industries. He drives innovation in AI powered food processing. In 2024, he oversaw the opening of a cutting edge facility in Utah, enhancing efficiency, quality, and safety in food production. And we have Philip Stringer, founder of Comprehensive Process Solutions, and Philip is an expert in engineering and R&D with 14 years of global experience across food, agriculture, and pharmaceuticals. Specializing in process engineering, he has led major capital projects, optimized manufacturing systems, and trained professionals, combining technical expertise with strategic business insight. And we have Jim Little, a career baker with 30 plus years of experience, specializes in artisan and industrial baking. From pastry training at Bittersweet Bakery to leading R&D at Craftmark Bakery, he has mastered laminated doughs, sourdoughs, and functional ingredients, enhancing texture and shelf life in high-speed automated baking production. And we have Tremaine Hartranft, VP of Technical Growth and Strategy at Reading Bakery Systems. And he drives innovation, risk management, and business expansion. Since joining in 2005, he has advanced through engineering and technical sales roles with a degree in electromechanical engineering from Penn State. He brings expertise from Brentwood Industries and Lucent Technologies. Dr. Lynn Carson, of course, a baking industry thought leader, has over 30 years of experience, a PhD in grain science. She led R&D and food safety at Wendy's and Dave's Killer Bread. In 2014, she founded Bakerpedia to provide free technical baking resources, advancing industry knowledge and innovation. Now, let's dive into our discussion on AI automation. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off by posing a question and go through each of you one by one to kind of give your contribution or answer to this question. And so we'll start off with Jim, and I'm going to start off, Jim, is how is your company meeting the changes in AI?
Well, it's been very slow so far. I would say that several months ago, like everybody, we started playing around with chatbot, just to see like what we could do to automate some SOPs that we were working on. You have a short time for the leaders to be able to do some of these things, and you give a prompts, then all of a sudden just reams of really well thought out SOPs were being manufactured in seconds. So it really got our attention. But since then, I think there's three main things that we're looking at, and this is with the hat I wear on continuous improvement. I'm in charge of R&D and continuous improvement. And on the continuous improvement side, we're looking at three main areas. One is using video analysis to create SOPs and retraining, because we have hundreds of video cameras in the facility, and most of these, honestly, are just if there's a problem, root cause, did somebody put the wrong ingredient in the batch, and then we go to root cause. Or somebody's not, doing something appropriate. But I think we can do a lot more than that. And once you model the right behavior for the AI, and say this is the way that you would do linear scaling, for example, and adding ingredients to your cookie dough. Once it has a model process, then if there's a deviation from that, it could come back and say, hey, I think there's some retraining that's needed on this shift, or for lack of a better term, computer, can you create me an SOP for how I would do this particular process just based on the video learning? So that's one big area. The other one fairly obvious one, I think, would be downtime reduction. So you have predictive failure. So we've got a couple systems already in the bakery, but they're not talking to each other. So one of them is a vibrational sensing system. So as the machine wear and bearings start to fail, they start making vibrational signatures. So that's one bit of data that you can gather. But we're also doing thermal imaging now. So we're having training the team to do thermal imaging of different bearings, and you can start seeing a failure progression as far as them getting warmer and warmer. Well, with the AI, they would be able to tell, hey, looks like this is going to fail in 20 hours. So why don't you take the downtime in 15 and start getting out ahead of the curve instead of running
Yep.
to failure, which is our MO. We just tend to run to
Yeah.
something fails, and then we deal with not only the downtime, but also there's a foreign material risk sometimes when things fail. It's
Hmm.
disruptive to the organization. And then you can also start the more information, you mentioned, garbage in, garbage out, but the more information that you feed into the system, the more it can start understanding, well, okay, I'm seeing a PM completion rate on this particular piece of equipment that seems to be lacking. So I'm going to dial up the failure time to 10 hours because it just doesn't look like this is going to make it. Uh,
Hmm.
and then the last big one that we're just starting to scratch the surface on is utilizing the mix curves for our bread mixers to be able to predictively add water or subtract water at the right time. We bring in about 500,000 pounds of flour a day. So if we're off by 0.5%, you can imagine that it starts being either big dollars that we're not realizing as far as free money, but also
Hmm.
if we're overhydrated, jam ups, poor quality, things downstream, and inevitably the bakers being young bakers, they're not been in the baking industry for 30 years. A lot of them, this might be their first job. They might have only been on the shift for 6 months or less.
Hmm.
And so they tend to start twiddling downstream to fix an upstream issue. The
Yep.
problem's happening in the mixer, and they start messing with the parameters on the machine and start trying to do things to, the well-intentioned things to try to get good quality out the door and maintain case rates. But the real action might have been in the mixer. And with
Yep.
the AI, we'd be able to filter through the noise and be able to say, okay, well, my curve is normally this. I normally have a certain time to reach peak. Looks like it's hitting the peak way too late or way too fast.
Hmm.
Also be pulling in other downstream things like I detect that they're starting to mess with the equipment. I detect that, my downstream QA measurements, my vision system measurements are starting to change, and put that all together. And probably in the next year, we don't foresee that actually empowering the AI to be making automatic changes just yet, because we don't understand necessarily what kind of sandbox we want the AI to play in. But inevitably, I foresee giving a pretty good latitude to just make these decisions and saying
Hmm.
we're going to add or subtract water now, and Baker, do you want to override this? Um,
Uh-huh.
but in the short term, it would be more the other way around. It'd be, hey, AI suggests that you make this change, and then it would be up to the baker to enact that or not.
Yep.
As it builds more and more understanding and more of a model for what happens, we'll get more and more autonomy. It's kind of like self-driving cars. Right now, people, I've got it in my car. I don't like to use it. Maybe 5 years from now, I'll just, read a book while I go to work because I feel much better about that this AI really knows and it's empowered and it's not going to make a bad decision.
Hmm.
So those are the
Excellent.
three areas: video analysis, downtime reduction, and then leveraging a lot of the data that we already have in the bakery to make decisions minute to minute on the doughs.
Super. Thank you, Jim. That's fascinating, and that dovetails it nicely. I think I'd like to ask Zhao to speak next on the same question. How is your company meeting the change in AI?
Uh, thanks for the opportunity to invite me for this roundtable. It's very exciting. So for KPM, we have a collection of companies working under the KPM brand, and one of the company, Smart Vision Works, started as an AI company in 2012. So we've been in playing in the AI world for quite some time. And today we see three areas that we are leveraging AI. And the first and foremost is our technology. So within KPM, we have three vision brand, Sightline, Process Control, iPro, and Smart Vision Works. Those three vision brand today all leverage AIs to improve detectability and especially focusing on foreign material detections for food safeties. Um, really there's a lot of demands started from mostly the protein industry. That's, they're looking for foreign objects, right? The metals and wood, plastics in the raw material and processed materials. And the traditional vision technology has its limitation, especially most of the techniques they are using color and pattern as a threshold. And the problem with natural food is the color varies, from batch to batch, from process to process. So the old way of setting up a threshold, looking at certain RGPs and then saying, okay, if it's outside this, it's a foreign material. It works well for processed food when you have universal products, and then you can just easily detect anomalies. So that's how many of our products works for the last 20 years for vision using the conventional color technique. But when you move into processed food and also with the focus on foreign material, you just don't know what the foreign material look like. You have to train the model with much wider variations of the products, the background, and also the type of object you're looking for. And with the recent developments in AI, it really is we see day and night differences. For some of the applications where in the past we'll think this is impossible using the conventional technique. And with the addition of AI, we can really get up to 90+% of accuracies of detecting and reliability detecting the foreign materials. So that's one area we're very, very excited, and we've been rolling out products for the protein markets, the bakery market, and also the fruits and vegetables market. Just looking at the foreign material in variety range of products. The second area that we're actually using AI is in embedding AI into our business process. So our marketing team, of course, with all the tools available, they are trying to use AI to improve productivity. We also use AI embedded in our CRM to look at our pipelines, our win ratios, and predict the forecast or what is coming for the coming period, right? So this is help us to improve the forecast accuracy. And also we are using AI and training AI for customer support because all the support tickets we have embedded in our CRM system with the history, with the solution, so we can train the AI model. And then when a new request came in, our team can, with much less effort, find out what potential root cause of the problem so that we can improve the response time to our customers. So that's kind of embedding AI and the tools in our business process. And the last piece that we just actually started working with our bakery customers is actually working with them because we have technologies that's embedded in inline using vision to look at product defects, foreign materials. At the end of the process, we also have rheology tools that can be used looking at the flours properties, look at the dough property throughout the baking process. So we are working with some customers now to leveraging different type of tools, a different type of process, so that we can come up together with a kind of a COA or spec, so that based on the specific process, the product in the bakery and the recipes they have, and then we can help them develop a specification on to the flour suppliers, right? The type of proteins, the type of starch damage, so they can spec that. And there's a lot of data during this process, looking at the flour qualities, and then look at the final bakery quantity. So, feed those information into AI model, can help us, more reliably predict what is coming. So that is still in the process. We're working with some key customers on that. Hopefully, we can customize, a specification to their bakery process, right? So help them to improve their overall process from the supply chain side. So those are the three areas I think, two we are already using, and one is we are looking into that more and more.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I think we're going to have a lot of discussion and questions coming as I get a chance to get through this first question with everyone. And so, Philip, with process controls and stuff, and what you've seen with your company and your customers, what has AI changed?
Yeah, so one of the big areas that we're actually helping customers with is understanding this new superpower of theirs, right? So
Mhm.
now to the points that everyone's bringing up, they're learning and they have access to all this new information that they maybe had an inclination about before or they were curious about before, but now they actually have it. And what do you do with it, right?
Mhm.
And they're getting such big volumes of it. So really just kind of understanding the customer and their culture or what they've done so far and helping them navigate the paradigm shift of again having so much more information. Each one is slightly different. You heard Jim and Zhao say different things for their specific organizations. So just imagine going to multiple customers who are all employing AI differently. So again, just really trying to help them understand this new information in a way that is specific and relevant to what they're doing, so that they don't kind of go down any rabbit holes either, right?
Mhm.
And go too far in one direction and say, yes, now you can see it, but is it actually practical for you? Is it prioritized information for you now? Is it something that's going to address a critical business need, or is it is it nice to have information and you had a curious person who brought it to you? Okay, that's good, but again, is it relevant? That's been a big thing that we're seeing now too. And I think having an outside opinion for customers to keep their eye on the prize has been a big help.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's very interesting. And Tremaine, at Reading, you guys are often at the forefront of a lot of new things coming online with product development and so on. And what do you see is, how your company is meeting these changes and when it comes to AI?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity here to talk today. And yeah, we hear a lot of good feedback from our customers. It's the key for us is to make sure we're listening well, right, and also trying to solve their problems. And as well as have our own initiatives to stay in front of the industry. Some of the biggest things that we see are really, you got to start somewhere by collecting the data, right? There's a lot of
Hmm.
data out there already, but things like Jim mentioned with vibration sensors and things like that, fuel flow meters. So once you implement these additional sensors on the machinery to detect if a bearing's going bad or motors going bad and things like that, now you can take that data and do something with it. And
Hmm.
really, we started off first around the predictive maintenance aspect, so you have hours meters, right? So after a bearing is moving for so many hours, we can send an alarm that says, hey, you got a maintenance needs to go and check that, make sure it's greased and make sure it's rotating properly, things like that. So we really started kind of at the data collection and then the predictive maintenance side. The other big areas that we're working on right now is energy savings. There's a lot of opportunity to utilize this data and these sensors to have your oven tune, automatically and display things on the screen that help you understand your energy usage. So, predictive maintenance, energy usage, vision systems to look at product for things like defects in your product and making sure it's the proper size, it's the proper color, things like KPM's doing with their vision. And then operator training. Operators have questions around, how does this work? Hey, I get this problem, right? And you want to be able to to kind of type that into the OIT screen and get a response back out so that and it learns from that, right? You know, the AI learns from that and then, you know, can retrain itself over time. So yeah, we're doing a lot kind of in those areas to help the industry keep moving forward.
Very cool, very cool. Must be very interesting. Been a long time since I've had a chance to visit Reading. I'm sure a lot has changed, right? Um, and so, Dr. Lin, do you want to round us out with your thoughts on the things that are, you know, affecting AI and the changes in the baking industry?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. One of the reasons why I pushed for this roundtable is because I needed a place for these ideas to come together. And everybody seemed to be talking about their little own areas of specialty, you know, be it food safety, be it production efficiency, be it, you know, well, I'm thinking more like we need to approach this from a multi-dimensional point of view rather than a linear point of view. But you know, we got to start somewhere today. So this is where I identified the three areas for progressing AI: the technology providers, the thinkers, and the doers.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have these three kind of people in this particular mastermind group, right? And that's what I'm pushing for. Technology, we have Dr. Zhao, we have Tremaine, right? We have the technology there already. Like we don't need to build this from scratch. So literally,
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky, right? Thinkers, people like Philip, people like ourselves at Bakerpedia, and how do we get this? How do we make this pot of data so rich that everybody can dip into it, right? And then the doers like Jim Little and you know Philip, what can they use from this pot to create the things that can pretty much run a general AI in their plants, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, these are big ideas, but you know, if you chew at them slowly, we are eventually going to get there. Like I want to see an open source for the baking industry. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
everyone thrive because you know, the concerns that Jim talked about, you know, mixer operators not, you know, making mistakes, even like a couple pounds of water evolves into a huge waste in a day, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. And I keep hearing back from the industry, you need to train these people better, train these people better. But the problem is we can find the people. We can't, there's no people anymore. Like we can't.
Well, and you know, it goes back to whether you're training people or training AI. As Jim mentioned, the statements that I often use that I've heard from, you know, IT people over the years is this that they use these two acronyms of GIGO and picnic. And GIGO means garbage in, garbage out. So the thing is always is you have to ask good questions to get good answers. So if you need to train AI well to get good results, right? And you know, if it's not working right, a lot of times it's the problem is not in front of the computer or not in the computer, it's in front of the computer, right? So that's what the IT people call a picnic, right? In other words, the user is the issue. They don't understand what they're doing. So you have two different training. Well, you have to train the baker to be a baker, and you have to train the baker to be a user, and you have to train AI to be a baker and you know basically capitulate to the user in that sense too, right? So it's a complex model of training that still has to take place too. And I just saw a thing on television the other night where they're talking about there's a company that has created generative AI to for autonomous freight trucks, for tractor trailers that will be on the road without drivers. And right now they're testing this in Texas with drivers to oversee it. And the driver just basically sits there with their hands near the steering wheel, and only has to take over if the AI makes a mistake or something, right? And the thing is as Jim has alluded to, and Dr. Zhao as well, is that it's all about the AI having to learn these things, right? Is you have to keep giving it more and more information, and then you can get the output that you want as well, right?
That's correct too. I mean, the lucky part is we don't need to start from scratch, right? We have, I mean, correct me, Dr. Zhao, we have data.
We have
Tremaine, correct me, you know how to deal with the data, right?
Right.
So how do we get that to start working with each other so that we can create an autonomous bakery?
So I think we've been in this industry 4.0 for quite some time, and there's a lot of sensors around the factory. There's a lot of tools being used, and we are not like missing any data. I remember reading an article like 5, 6 years ago, like for some areas, 99% of the data that's collected is not being used. Right. So the challenge is not really the data, is how do you gather the data and then, present it in a way that, okay, you can meet, you have an objective you're trying to accomplish, right? It's the intelligence we're trying to get to. And the challenge is a multidiscipline problem, right? So to get the data, you need the technologist, you need the sensors, you need really to get this reliably so that you avoid the garbage in and garbage out issue. But to get the intelligence, you need people with applications knowledge. That is, in the bakery, you need the master bakers that they have the experience, they have the knowledge, and they know what is good and what is bad. And they have to feed their experience, together with the data. This is where sometimes, the industry is facing challenges. We have, and we actually just recently figured out ourselves is, we've been selling vision systems for the last 20 plus years. And people use it to do like the quality inspection, defect rejections, right? So it's been going on, especially in the bakery industry. They are pioneers of vision for quality inspection. But for most of the years, people view vision as a waste generator because they look at it saying you keep rejecting things, but we think it's okay. And on top of that, as you keep rejecting those things, you're not telling the people on the front saying, what do you need to do to improve it? So but on the other hand, we have our rheology tools that are being used by the millers and by the R&D team. When they do baking tests, they use the rheology tools to do all these things. But they have no clue, after certain spec, how they're product gonna show up at the end of the baking process, right? So yes, we have all the data, but they are completely disconnected.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So now we're working with the bakers and we're trying to connect these dots together and saying, let's see what's your production yield at the end of the line. And let's look at a rheology spec and then see what your suppliers are giving to you, how you spec your flours. And let's see all these things doesn't match. And most time than not, they don't match. It's not a surprise, but now you actually have something that's digitized, right? And then when we work with the master baker, they can actually put all these things together. So I think the missing link in this industry is really people with the applications knowledge, the experience, right? Tie everything together.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm hearing also, the big difference with call it modernization that we're hearing here is that it's not about eliminating people and their jobs in that sense. It is really about further utilizing the experts that are still around, and because of the lack of experts, that we need to in a sense use AI to be like a surrogate of the experts in that way, right? And so Tremaine, when we talk about those things, which part do you see as something from the AI that can be implemented in bakeries in the next 5 years that you see happening where there's more automation or autonomy or things like that?
Yeah, Mark, that's where we're really looking heavily into the utilizing the vision systems to drive adjustments upstream, to see that, okay, that the piece was cut at the rotary cutter, let's say a cracker shape or something, and we can drive that back to change the speeds in the sheeting roll if the thickness is off or the shape is deformed. So, we're really looking heavily into utilizing the vision for more than just sort of identifying defects, but rather, driving it back upstream, as Dr. Zhao was saying, kind of tying it back together so that you're utilizing, that tool effectively. Because it's one thing to identify it, the data, a lot of this data already does exist, right? And it's out there, but, the plants struggle to do anything with it, and understand, what they can do with it, right? And that's where, I think that was a great segue from what was being said there about just how do you take that expertise and bring it all back together. So yeah, definitely the vision side and the the energy optimization, right? That's a huge opportunity to see, you know, understand the moisture of the dough, right? Make sure that the dough moisture is consistent, and also, that feeds all the way downstream. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to remove moisture during the baking process, right? And develop, flavors and color and things like that. But, ultimately you have to remove the moisture, and optimizing that through the entire process with AI and having your oven tuned because it knows that the moisture is X on the upstream side. Now those two systems can work together and say, well, wait a second, I had to fire a little harder to get my finished moisture, and feeding some information back to the upstream where it says, okay, hey, do we need to adjust the moisture on the mixing side? Things with, like, especially if you think about like a continuous mixer where the operator isn't really involved, compared to maybe like a batch mixer, right? So now you can kind of make those adjustments, all through the PLC, and have that all talking together. So there's really a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, that leads into like Philip, I want to pose to you is like, what kind of relief do you believe bakers are going to get from the AI implementation? Like Tremaine talked about, energy consumption, for example. And so what kind of things have you been seeing there, or do you see as happening?
Yeah, I think Tremaine hit on some good points. When you think about different scale bakers, right? So you think about your commercial baker on rack ovens versus your commercial or your industrial baker on tunnel ovens, like what they do at Reading. I think this AI gives them the relief of being able to model systems out much further in advance, right? To stress test or simulate certain situations and not generate as much waste, right? So saying, hey, if I were to change these parameters or these inputs on this particular type of oven, what type of results should I expect to see? Is this parameter change better than that parameter change? I'm trying to target better color, but I want to maintain moisture. Okay, well, what can you model? Can you give me a model where I make some parameter changes and achieve that and don't generate more waste, right? Because now a lot of times everything is trial and error, right? You have a master baker who has, a lot of experience, and they know the key areas to go to, or the primary levers to pull, but there's always an uncertainty there until they do it, right?
Yeah.
So now, you give them a tool that says, hey, if you these are the top five, or the top, 3 to 5 options you should choose or try, go and verify and look, saves you so much time on R&D, right? And which, again, thinking, for a big company, R&D costs millions of dollars, right? And it goes through a lot of different channels to be approved. So now you can go through those channels faster. For a startup, that might not cost them millions of dollars, but it costs them a higher proportion of their capital, or their working capital. So now they can use AI to simulate this beforehand, and retain some of that capital. So then they can innovate the next thing, or they can scale, and they can, go and they can transition from a rack oven to a tunnel oven or something with that additional capital that they have.
That's excellent. Yeah. Jim, you're our master baker and our practitioner here today. And I'm going to give you a little bit of preamble as I pose my next question to you. And as like, I've had early exposure to AI, I would say, because I consider it, as we've mentioned here, it's all about data. It's data collection, and what to do with that data. And one of the things a few years back that I'd worked on a lot was with a formulation software that allowed you to input certain things and to basically say, okay, I want this pretzel now to have 3 grams of fiber per 10 pretzels, right? And these are my ingredients and their fiber sources, and fix my formula for me so I get that, right? And so the AI in that sense, it can calculate and can give you that formula, but what is missing is that experiential input of the master baker, of the practitioner, and understanding that this won't work, right? I
Right.
mean, you and I know we look a lot of formulas sometimes, and it's like, what are you trying to do, right? And so, and with that, like, what are the benefits and the downsides of AI implementation that you kind of see happening, right?
Well, I mean, it definitely would shorten your learning curve. Like I can tell you that a lot of bakers are aware of how much syrup you can put in a cookie, for example, to retain moisture, how much glycerin you might put in a dough to retain moisture. What I can tell you just from the School of Hard Knocks is that there's a limit that I can put through my freezers where the freezing point is so low that the dough is still too pliable coming out of the freezer.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody presented me a formula that had 2% glycerin in it, I'd be saying, yeah, I can run that on my ready to eat line, but I can't run that on my frozen dough line because I'm going through a freezer and the dough is going to be so pliable I won't be able to pack it. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the difference, is that as you could start to train the AI to understand these parameters, it can at least, give you some guide rails right off the bat, but it's going to be empowered with a combination of, human experience. It's not going to get that information just out of the thin air. It's going to be from prior work.
Mm-hmm.
One kind of funny story about how we could have used AI about 10 years ago when we opened the bakery. We started receiving flour, and we started seeing a lot of metal contamination showing up on the magnets. And it got us really concerned that there was a problem at the mill. We went to the mill, we had all these, it was very kind of spooky because, is the mill having a big problem? It turned out that the magnets were so powerful, they were pulling an enrichment material out of the flour.
Mm-hmm.
But you can imagine, let's say the bakery of the future, it comes loaded with not a dumb magnet. It's got a magnet that's software driven, that's AI driven, and it starts recognizing certain signatures of, hey, this looks like enrichment material. Turn down your magnet, or this looks like a problem. We've seen this before in various experiences. This is coming from a certain part at the mill that you could go directly to the miller and say, we think the failure is coming from there, or that you have a magnascope, a vision system, from KPM or something, you put it under there, go, oh, this is enrichment material. I mean, it could have really saved us about a month of a lot of stress and heartache in about a few seconds, just if it had been done this way. And then, Linda, your point about open source, when you get that latest, iPhone update, it always gives you the question, do you want to share this data? It's all going to be anonymous. So let's say that all of this Internet of Things, we have the ability to just start sharing anonymous data. You're like, hey, we've learned the AIs are going to start learning. Now, as a company that needs to protect IP and protect like our customers, because we have a lot of proprietary formulas, we're going to have to set guide rails as to how open we can be. Because I don't want just anybody getting into like critical business, conversations, customer formulas, things like that. But I think there's ways that we can do that. So like, at the end of the day, it's to everybody's advantage that we start sharing this information and we start learning best practices. But when I say we, it's a broader we now than just, the crusty old bakers like me and Mark. It's going to be the younger bakers who have AI as like kind of second nature. They're
Yep.
going to be AI literate from day one in the industry, whereas the older bakers are like, oh yeah, we're getting up to speed. By the time we get good at it, it's going to be probably too late. But the younger
Yeah.
ones, it's like the kids. And now, and when I go to my old schools, it's just mind blowing because they've got laptops at every desk. They're fluent in that from day one, fluent in internet from day one. The
Yep.
next generation of bakers are going to be fluent in AI from day one, and that's
Yep.
the big change.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, just saw a news article the other day where they're talking about how um, uh, parents are having to learn how to restrict screen time on tablets and phones, and that children are getting tablets as early as 4 years old. Right? It's and that I mean it's crazy, right? I mean, I mean, I realize some parents do it as simply as it's a way to distract them as an entertainment tool. But the thing is that they're learning this already at 4 years of age. They're already learning how to handle these pieces of equipment, and they're being engaged by all of this already.
So, I think I have one more question for Jim, and really, I'm looking for next steps. So, my question to Jim is really, are you able to link what you have right now on the finished products, data from the finished products to, say, beginning of chain, like rheological data? Are you able to link that? And if not, what do you need for that to happen?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think the problem is if there's a gap in your system that's like an inch, it might as well be a mile, you know. So we have a lot of data here, and a lot of these systems in the bakery don't talk to each other, you know. So like we have, for example, mountains of QA data. We've got complaint histories, we've got vision system data. You know, we're constantly checking products with vision systems and to see whether they're meeting the quality specs or not. But to be able to connect the dots between that and what about the moment in time when that product was produced? What was the dough like at that moment? Where we're seeing something that we can start, because usually what'll happen is there's minor deviations, like let's say that the hydration problem I mentioned earlier, the bakers didn't recognize they should have added a little bit of water. That's usually a minor deviation, doesn't really cause a big stress. What if they forgot an ingredient? Okay, some things are dosed automatically, and there could be an automatic dosing failure that you know things happen in the bakery, but usually it's a person failing to add a hand add. And what if we could connect the dots in real time? First of all, let's not even let it get into the freezer. If we can start seeing that signature of you know, the dough is quite a bit different. You know, we did a study several years ago where we saw that we could get a lot of really bad doughs through the equipment. But with the right rheological detection, you can see the differences in the profile. It just might be so subtle that the baker doesn't recognize it. So even leaving out a dough conditioner, we saw, strangely enough, it was getting through the equipment pretty well, but then it wasn't surviving later. And so I think the biggest thing is we need to have an AI strategy. And right now, I think we're lacking the AI strategy. You know, we have IT leadership and they're great, but they're dealing with, you know, it's like triage in the emergency room. Their number one concern right now is keeping the service running because there's a lot of server traffic and it's getting crazier and crazier with how much data we're pushing through the bakery. So we're having to upgrade our servers. The other thing is ransomware and other attacks. So as a large business, you're constantly exposed to, you know, something as innocuous as a phishing scam to something like what could be a ransomware attack that could shut you down. So they're dealing with real-time stuff that's very important. But the next level to this is having a comprehensive AI strategy of, you know, how are we going to leverage all this data and actually improve the bakery and reduce risk and take us to the next generation. And that's, you know, when did Chatbot GPT-4 come out? Like it was probably only a year or so ago. I mean, things are evolving so quickly that it's hard for people to keep up. And I think
Yeah.
that's where we can use lean on, you know, KPM and people that have been doing this a while, because you know, do we really want to be making our own mistakes as we go, or can we leapfrog and utilize knowledge from people that are already deeper into the process and kind of like advance what we're trying to do here in the next 6 months? I'm making a lot of notes as the other guys are talking, but like I
Right.
think we'd
So
have follow-up
what can
meetings
we do for
here.
you, Jim? I mean, I am looking in the future for autonomous bakeries. What can we do to help you get there? What's the next step? What do you need?
Well, I think first of all, like everything, every bakery is a little bit different, but there's commonalities, right? So I think what would be awesome is to have, you know, a default program for different types of operations that you can say, hey, you're starting a new bakery. Let's use the defaults here. And now you can always start to go customize. Oh, you're making frozen bread dough. Here's what you need. These are the data linkages that you're going to need in order to actually make the AI really functional. If you don't have those, you better have those in your design now because it's usually a lot more painful later on to try to add that. We opened up the bakery 10 years ago, and a lot of the equipment wasn't even networked. Okay, so the first few years we were networking all the equipment. Now we've got exabits of data going through the bakery, but a lot of times nobody's doing anything with the data. I mean, that 95%, I think that's being generous. I think it's probably higher than 95% of the data that where nobody's really utilizing it. So rather than having a new baker or a new bakery company have to go through this learning curve of what to do in terms of I think having, I could just download, you know, Bakery 2.0 and say, okay, this is the systems that you need to be able to run an effective operation. And it could start detecting what's missing. It looks like you're missing linkage with your dough rheology, looks like you're missing linkage with QA. Here's what you need to do. And it just jumpstarts you, especially the design phase of any bakery is the most critical part. Now, there's the whole other work of what to do with all the older bakeries. And again, I think it would be just as valid for that. You're a bakery that's been in operation for 30 years. You're looking to improve your efficiency. I'd want to be able to go to a company that's not just an AI company. Like for example, you can click around Google Cloud and you can find a bunch of stuff. None of it's bakery specific. Okay. It's all powerful stuff, and eventually, you probably would find something that would be useful to you. But having a bakery AI package that starts off with like these are all the things that you need, I think that's where we got to get to. It's all going to be customized from there because all our bakeries are different. Even when you have similar production lines, sometimes even line to line, those lines have nuances, but it's going to be a good starting place.
And I think with that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Tremaine, but I think that as a supplier, like you guys supply, equipment and R&D support and everything like that, that type of supply to the industry, the ingredient supply to the industry, they need to share their learnings and best practices into these types of models as well, because I mean Jim, as we have just been recently experiencing, well, eggs have gotten a little bit pricey, haven't they, right? And so now we want to have solutions to partially replace the eggs, maybe 30, maybe 50% and things like that. And the suppliers of that technology knowledge from, like, say, Reading, who has worked with the customers who been working on products, or ingredient companies that have solutions that they have could fit or have been working on, and things, that this information gets shared in the sense of that, not of like, oh, I'll give you my secret if you buy my stuff, but there should be a little bit more of, these are the kinds of things that work, and that's the kind of benefit you get if you buy our product. It's that service is included with it, right? And let the cards fall where they may, kind of thing. And because it's only going to support and help us all, other than somebody struggling with a change and then end up not buying any solution from anyone.
Right.
I mean, what kind of things have you seen there, Tremaine? I mean, you must see a lot of proprietary stuff that you wish you could share with the industry more, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're often, I'll say, stuck in the middle of a lot of things, right? We see the customer side, we see these, we work with other vendors, to create solutions, and we always have to be very careful with what we share. Every project we do has a confidentiality agreement, and quite honestly, even if it doesn't, we treat it as it has a confidentiality agreement. So it is very, it is a kind of a very slippery slope in some respects, but I agree, there are some key things, like it'd be nice to share as an industry. I mean, you bring up about the ingredients and how can you modify them and things. We had that with there were customers when potato flake was very expensive. There was a potato shortage a couple of years ago, and they were looking like, well, how can we develop a product that takes a little bit more potato flake out and puts a little bit more flour, wheat flour, in to offset that and still make a good baked potato crisp. So we definitely see, a lot of those things, and, have a lot of that data, under lock and key. So yeah, if we could get I'll say the large companies, right? If you get the end users, the bakers themselves to say, yeah, I'm okay if we share, this, this, and this, but we can't, share these other topics. So I think, you'd almost have to go through some sort of, whatever that looks like, a sharing process that's legalized on the front end and formalized on the front end, or after that developed in our tech center. We have different customers in every day in our technical center and our science and innovation center to come up with these things. So if we could figure out what we can share and what we can't, it'd be great. And certainly there's things that we learn about baking and those types of things that, yeah, it's an industry-wide thing and it involves more of the machinery and we're able to share those things. But yeah, when it comes to specifics of ingredients, we're very careful with that proprietary nature.
Right. So, to answer that, proprietary knowledge versus open source versus common knowledge, there needs to be some kind of compromise on who's sharing, who's willing to share, what do you get in return for sharing, right? I mean, we've worked this way for so long in the baking industry, so that we'll get to that hurdle and we'll figure it out. We're all humans, we'll figure something out. But to answer Jim's question on, correct me if I got this right, you want to see an bakery AI package where you could bring into your bakery that connects everything, right? But does that mean, Jim, that you already have data specialists in your plant?
Well, we do, but they're not. I mean, things are moving so quickly that none of these data specialists are really AI experts. They're more systems experts. They're experts at connectivity. They're experts at the network. They're experts at internet security. But what we need is this next generation of experts that have already done this in a bakery space. And it's like when it's plug and play, when you have like the AI system that just like you just start plugging inputs into it, and the more that you plug in, the more that it'll be able to connect the dots from end to end. I mean, we have things that'll happen just because of where we're located with weather, where weather events start changing our flour in the bakery. Because our flour is the air that blows the flour from the trucks into the silos is not treated. So within an hour, we can have completely different absorption in our doughs, and the bakers never recognize it quickly enough. So that kind of thing, like where if it could really sense that a weather event's happening and it's not a flour quality issue, it's just a weather issue, and it might trigger different decisions. If the flour was stronger, I might look to reduce gluten. If it's just drier, I might just look to add water. And those are like sometimes difficult decisions for the bakers to know.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I found a solution for you in terms of a finished package for bakery AI solution for the whole bakery, would you be interested in that?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's something where, we could localize it to a certain production line or a certain business unit to start. And eventually, as we get learnings, there's going to be, applications even in different processes that are going to be very similar to each other. So it's not like you have to go through a completely new learning curve. I mean, but we do frozen dough production and we do fresh baking. So there's some different things that are happening on each system, but the basics are all still there. So that would be my ask. I think the faster that we get to that, again, something that's still customizable, it's good from line to line or bakery to bakery. There's going to be a lot of differences, so it can't be like the old school can software where it's not. It's got to be like Play-Doh. It's got to be they have it come in a certain form, but then you can start manipulating and changing it depending on your needs.
Very good.
I think everybody here understands what they need to do in terms to get to that next step and who they need to partner with to get to the next step. So, so one more audacious ask, Jim, is Kraftmark willing to run a facility that is totally AI, that we put in all our efforts and all our brain power into making it autonomous, and we share the.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for the whole organization, but what my closing little soundbite for you, Lynn, is that like the question to me is not like whether you have an AI strategy, it's what your AI strategy is going to be. So like it's not like it's almost like saying, well, I don't want to have a strategy around the computer. I want to have a strategy around a phone. I mean, it's that fundamental to business processes that if you don't have an AI strategy, you're basically just hiding your head in the sand. And being able to leverage AI is going to be like the success or failure of the business. So I really believe that, if you're trying to make improvements like we are and waste reduction, we're going to run into a wall here if we're not using AI. It's either that we don't have enough people, so just I could hire 1,000 people and run around the bakery and find and fix problems, or I could have an AI and empower it with enough knowledge to start either making changes, like if we give it within a certain latitude to make actual changes, or at least make recommendations for humans to make the changes. But either way, we're going to shrink our learning curve, and the organizational learning is going to get a lot deeper just by, if I have 400 people in the facility and they're all plugging in information, eventually the machine knowledge is going to be pretty awesome because it's beginning learning from everybody's experiences and also from the experiences of the equipment itself, which is really cool.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, so I think so. I think I had a recent customer that has a very specific brand and they want everything to be as organic and natural as possible. And they were having some shelf life things that they wanted to take into consideration, and they wanted to know what additives to add, but they really, really wanted to preserve kind of the purity of their brand. So using AI, we were able to really identify some very select options that stayed true to their brands, remain natural and organic, but allowed for them to not have to use, more kind of chemically oriented additives. And I think that's a thing that, in particular for brands that, that's a major offering that they provide their consumers. AI is going to enable them to do that because now there's going to be, there's thousands of different options out there, innumerable options that, if you just tried to research on your own, you wouldn't find it. But AI can really bring those in a consolidated fashion to you so that they can have that specific thing that they need, without, going through a lot of trial and error again on things that may not even be comfortable with. Right.
Yeah, 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 I agree with that to a certain degree. I mean, a lot of these ingredients do exist for a purpose, right? And I think enzymes is the one thing I probably don't think you could replace as easily because even when it comes to some of the natural things like Philip is talking about, there are people who have decided that um, they don't want calcium propionate on the label. They just it's bad for you, right? It's somehow it's gotten a bad rap. It's no good, right? So now they're adding, yeah, so they're using cultured dextrose or cultured wheat, and they're allowed to put that on the label. So that sounds nice and wholesome and healthy for them. You know what cultured dextrose and cultured wheat produces? Propionates. It's so they're adding the same preservative, just with a different name, right? So AI can of course help you identify these types of things as well, right? And so I think that some of it, yes, I think some things cannot be simply replaced by machining the dough differently. And I mean, when a dough requires oxidation, it requires oxidation. You can either age the flour or add ascorbic acid, right? I mean, ascorbic acid takes 2 seconds, aging the flour takes 6 months, right? So pick your battles, right? That type of thing, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and I also think, like Mark, AI is just going to make it transparent. It's just going to give you the information to make the right decisions on your end.
mhm.
And it's not necessarily going to eliminate these things, mainly because it depends on your customer, right? Like Philip's customer is focused on organic side of things. There are still so many other customers that focuses on conventional baked items, which don't have a problem using these things. What I see AI do is provide more transparency to make your decisions and using less of these ingredients, because it's going to provide the ability to make you use less because you reduce your pH or you have better GMPs, you
Yeah.
know? So AI is going to give all this information to you so that you can make these decisions. But the actuality of these things going away is quite low.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
for being in a big bakery and having people as being the food contact problem with, especially with mold inhibition, what the AI could do is say, hey, I just looked at the last video footage and it looks like people are touching the product with bare hands. Oh, and I just evaluated your swabbing results for the last 3 months. It looks like a pattern of cleaning that's not accurate. You got too high of a spore count in the room. I just
Yeah.
looked at the pH of the product. If you would just drop it by 2 points, then you probably don't need this, amount of mold inhibitor because your pH is too high. Just all
Hmm.
the information that, yes, with enough diligence and enough experts, you could get at, but the AI will just bring that all to you much faster. And you can't always count on having that expert in the bakery 24/7. When you have it, be grateful for it. But like what happens the other, 23 hours of the day, that's where the AI just doesn't sleep. That's
Yeah.
the thing. It might be fallible. I mean, we're finding early AI kind of makes up stuff. But it's getting better and better. So, I think we'll be able to deal with that issue here as it gets us, a lot smarter.
And yeah, and with that, I think also Jermaine, like when you talked about like the potato flour issue and stuff like that, if you had something where you could ask AI, this is my issue, and these are the ingredients I'm working with. What can I do to adjust it to get my end result?
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
would be absolutely awesome, right? I mean, I remember working with a statistical model many years ago where we were using it on cake donuts, which can be pretty complex sometimes in getting certain results. And it allowed you to run formulas based on a cube. So if you think of the corners of a cube where you have essentially 8 points, and you are running these 8 formulas, and you put in the results into the model, and you have, of course, a set of results of what you're targeting. It could be rise times, it could be size or something like that, and then it will produce 4 new formulas for you, and then you run those 4 formulas, and then it narrows it down to 2 formulas for you to try, right? And further adjustments. So it AI could do that even faster based on collecting data from the hive, right? As Lynn is talking about, from this open source type of data, in that these adjustments cause these changes in rise time, or et cetera, expansions, whatever. I mean, so yeah, interesting question, but yeah, a lot of possibilities, right? Um, and Philip and Dr. Zhao, we have not to leave you out. Have you got anything you want to add on to that question?
No, I think it's certainly we are in this new territory that there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah,
And it's hard to say, never, because we don't know what's going to be invented tomorrow. But certainly, the AI will definitely help us to accelerate the rate of innovation.
cool. Excellent. If we don't get to your question, please go to the Facebook Baking Industry Professionals group. We have a huge membership there. It is very focused on baking industry people, so it's not a free-for-all of 100,000 people. And so please post your questions there, and Jim and I are quite active there too, to help answer your questions. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Who sold the iPhone first? I mean, who could I
I think with the environment we live in, I think we need to, work together, right? I mean, I think that's the whole purpose of, this event that Lynn's putting on here. And I think it's important for the supplier and the end user to come up with a game plan, like Jim mentioned about all the processes. It'd be great to have a starting point in the document that says, here is every step where we can collect data all the way through, right? And now we can take that as the supplier and do something with it, right? Because while we understand the bakery processes and need to be experts, we also don't live in a bakery 24/7, and you guys as a baker see more things than we'll see as an equipment supplier. So, definitely need a sort of a tag team approach on that to help each other be successful.
Fantastic. Well, this has been an amazing, I mean, I've been looking forward to this and it did not disappoint, right? It's been a very great conversation and I feel like we've really only started to scratch the surface on this.
I want us to all walk away today with manageable next steps for our teams. That's why we're all here. We craft our time to come figure out, what's our AI strategy, like we learned from Jim. The AI strategy to leave from today is not to not have an AI strategy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
AI strategy for me going out of this is to create a group where everybody contributes whatever it is, right? I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's something that I would love to work with Dr. Zhao on creating a group where we share everything as much as we can and as much data. Hey, I mean, if you're not using 95% of your data, why don't you just give it to us, right?
Exactly.
That's how I look at it. It's just like, just give it, donate your data to some good cause, right? So perhaps it's something we could look at. Perhaps we could have a think tank where everybody can contribute and take away something from it. That's what I would like to see as our next steps.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. I mean, I see that not only for us as bakers, but also like in entrepreneur groups and all these similar, if we are successful at creating a model like this in the baking industry, it would be easily duplicatable in so many other areas of business and food industries and so on. Right?
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everyone. This has been wonderful. Thanks. We'll see you all again at the next one next month.